The world of Tesla has always been about breaking barriers, from the earliest whispers of the Roadster to the bold arrival of the Model S, and then the mainstream revolution of the Model 3. Tesla wasn't just making cars, it was shaping the future of mobility. But in 2020, a new chapter opened, one that felt less like a continuation and more like a rebirth. It was the arrival of something approachable, something universal, something designed not just for enthusiasts or pioneers, but for families, professionals, and dreamers everywhere. This was the Tesla Model Y, the car that many have called the crossover for everyone. When Tesla first unveiled the Model Y, many wondered why another crossover. Why this size? Why this market? Why now? The answer turned out to be simple but powerful, because this was the vehicle the world had been waiting for. Compact enough to fit the demands of urban life, yet spacious enough to be a family hauler. Affordable enough to attract first-time EV buyers, yet advanced enough to carry Tesla's DNA of innovation. The Model Y was not just another entry in Tesla's lineup. It was the catalyst that pushed the company into a new orbit in 2020. It arrived at a time when the world was shifting, cities were changing, families were rethinking mobility, and the electric revolution was no longer a dream of the future, but a demand of the present. The Model Y stepped onto that stage, not quietly, but with the subtle confidence of something that knew its role, to dominate, and dominate it did. From the very beginning, the Model Y was crafted as a blend of Tesla's greatest hits. It borrowed the heart of the Model 3, Tesla's most affordable sedan, while carrying the spirit of the Model X, Tesla's full-size luxury SUV. But it was neither a copy nor a compromise. Instead, it was a reinvention of the crossover mind, efficient, and designed to appeal not to a niche, but to the masses. It was the moment Tesla stopped being just a disruptor of luxury brands and became a household name for everyone. The introduction of the Model Y wasn't just about specs and features. It was about timing. The world was entering a decade where electric cars weren't novelties, they were necessities. Governments were tightening emissions rules. People were demanding sustainable options, and traditional automakers were scrambling to catch up. Tesla, however, had already built the infrastructure, the brand, and the momentum. All they needed was a vehicle that could truly take the torch and run with it. The Model Y became that torchbearer. The design was unmistakably Tesla. Minimalist, futuristic, and aerodynamic. But the genius lay in its practicality. With optional third-row seating, it could carry 7 passengers. With a panoramic glass roof, it opened the cabin to sky and light. With cargo space that rivaled larger SUVs, it proved that a crossover didn't need to sacrifice utility for efficiency. This was the promise of the Model Y. It could be a city car, a family car, a road trip car, and a commuter's car, all at once. But perhaps what made the Model Y so compelling was its accessibility. For years, Tesla had been criticized for being a company of the elite, producing vehicles that, while groundbreaking, were financially out of reach for the average buyer. The Model Y shattered that perception. It brought the dream of owning a Tesla into the grasp of millions who had watched from the sidelines. And once they drove it, they realized something profound. This wasn't just an electric car. This was the future in motion. As deliveries began in March 2020, something extraordinary happened. Despite a global pandemic that froze industries, shut down factories, and paralyzed economies, the Model Y surged ahead. Demand didn't falter, it accelerated. Families who had once sworn by gasoline SUVs suddenly saw the Model Y as the smarter choice. Young professionals who wanted both performance and practicality chose it as their daily driver. And for Tesla, the numbers spoke volumes. This was quickly becoming their top-selling model. The rise of the Model Y wasn't just a sales story, it was a cultural shift. People didn't just buy it because it was electric. They bought it because it was Tesla's most relatable car. It wasn't intimidating like the Model X, and it wasn't a luxury statement like the Model S. It was simply usable. And in that simplicity lay its genius. By 2021, the Model Y was already climbing global sales charts. By 2022, it was outselling entire brands' lineups. And then, in 2023, history was made. For the first time, not only in Tesla's history, but in the history of the automotive world, an electric car became the best-selling car of any kind, anywhere. The Tesla Model Y dethroned decades of gasoline dominance and proved that the electric future had not only arrived, had taken over. And this is where our story begins. Because the Model Y is not just a car, it's a turning point. A turning point for Tesla, a turning point for drivers, and a turning point for the world. The Model Y is the crossover for everyone. And in this story, we'll explore why. Now moving into the main body, around 6,500 words in this part, expanding deeply into design, features, performance, global adoption, comparisons, customer impact, and Tesla's strategy. Since this is huge, I will write it as one cinematic flow without headings, per your request. The narration continues seamlessly. When you sit inside a Model Y for the first time, the silence is the first thing you notice. Not just the absence of engine noise, but a kind of engineered quietness that makes the entire experience feel futuristic. There are no clusters of buttons, no sea of dials. Instead, one screen dominates the cabin, a tablet-like centerpiece that becomes your window into everything the car can do. Climate control, navigation, entertainment, it all lives there. For some, it feels like stepping into a spacecraft. For others, it feels like freedom from clutter. But for everyone, it feels like Tesla. The Model Y wasn't designed to imitate the vehicles of the past. It was designed to break from them. Traditional automakers often build electric cars by taking existing gasoline models and modifying them, hoping to transition slowly. Tesla never played that game. The Model Y was born electric, born digital, and born with the DNA of software. Over-the-air updates meant that the car wasn't static, it evolved. Owners would wake up one morning and discover their car had gained new features overnight. This wasn't just revolutionary, it was addictive. The Model Y wasn't just a car, it was a platform for ideas. A symbol of what happens when you design a vehicle around possibility instead of limitation. The traditional crossover had always been a compromise, something that tried to please everyone but rarely excelled at anything. Too heavy to be efficient, too cramped to be practical, too bland to inspire. Tesla's approach was different. They asked, what if a crossover didn't have to compromise? What if it could be the most efficient vehicle in its class, while also being the most practical and still carry the flair of performance? That question shaped everything about the Model Y. Take the performance, for instance. In its most capable version, the Model Y performance could sprint from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 3.5 seconds. That's not just quick for a crossover, that's quicker than sports cars costing twice as much. Yet it wasn't only about speed. The dual-motor all-wheel drive system gave it confidence on wet roads, icy conditions, or winding highways. It wasn't just a commuter, it was a road trip machine, capable of going hundreds of miles on a single charge, recharging rapidly at Tesla's supercharger network, and delivering that seamless blend of power and silence that only an EV can dot. And then there was the range. Range anxiety had long haunted the electric car market. People loved the idea of EVs, but feared being stranded without power. Tesla understood this better than anyone, and the Model Y was their answer. With variants that delivered well over 300 miles of EPA-rated range, it redefined expectations. This wasn't a short-distance commuter. It was a long-distance traveler. A vehicle you could take on a family vacation without hesitation, knowing that charging infrastructure had your back. Speaking of infrastructure, this is where Tesla's strategy shined brightest. The Model Y wasn't just competing against other crossovers, it was backed by the world's most advanced charging network. While other automakers were still trying to negotiate partnerships with third-party charging providers, Tesla had already built an ecosystem. The supercharger network made owning a Model Y practical in ways competitors couldn't match. Drivers didn't just buy a car, they bought entry into a global system designed for freedom of movement. But numbers and infrastructure alone don't capture why the Model Y became so loved. It was also about the design, that unmistakable Tesla silhouette, sleek, aerodynamic, yet subtly muscular. The panoramic glass roof stretched endlessly, flooding the cabin with light. The minimalist interior, with its vegan leather seats and open surfaces, created an atmosphere unlike any crossover. Before it wasn't trying to mimic luxury, was inventing a new kind of modern simplicity. Sitting in a Model Y felt less like being in a machine and more like being in a carefully designed environment, one that valued calmness and clarity. Families embraced it because it worked for them. Fold the seats down, and you had nearly 70 cubic feet of cargo space. Need to bring the kids along. The optional third-row seating made it a 7-passenger vehicle. Need to tow. The Model Y could pull up to 3,500 pounds, plenty for small trailers, bikes, or boats. It was the kind of versatility that didn't scream for attention, but quietly delivered on everything a household might need. The genius of the Model Y lay in its universality. For the tech enthusiast, it was a rolling gadget, a constantly updating marvel of software and AI. For the eco-conscious buyer, it was a statement of sustainability, a zero-emissions family car. For the performance seeker, it was a sleeper sports machine disguised as a crossover. And for the everyday driver, it was simply practical. It fit into life seamlessly, and once it did, it was hard to imagine going back to anything else. Marketing for the Model Y was also unconventional. There were no glossy magazine ads, no flashy billboards, no celebrity endorsements. Instead, Tesla relied on something far more powerful, the product itself. Owners became the ambassadors. They gave test drives to neighbors, posted reviews on YouTube, shared stories on social media. Every time someone sat inside and experienced the acceleration, the silence, the glass roof stretching above them, they were hooked. Word of mouth became the most effective advertising campaign Tesla ever had. This strategy worked because the Model Y wasn't built for a specific demographic. It wasn't just for the wealthy, or just for the environmentally conscious, or just for tech geeks. It was for everyone. A family in Europe could buy it as their only car. A commuter in California could use it to replace a gasoline sedan. Business professional in China could choose it as a status symbol. The universality of its appeal made it borderless, and Tesla capitalized on that global demand. By 2021, Tesla was ramping up production not only in Fremont, California, but also in Shanghai. Later, factories in Berlin and Austin would join in, making the Model Y a truly global product. Each factory wasn't just an assembly plant, it was a statement of Tesla's ambition. Giga Shanghai, for instance, became one of the most productive car factories in the world, churning out Model Es at a pace that shocked competitors. The strategy was simple: build where the demand is, and make the Model Y as accessible as possible. Competitors watched nervously. Legacy automakers had long dominated the crossover segment, with models like the Toyota RAV4, Honda CR-V, and Volkswagen Tiguan leading sales globally. But suddenly, Tesla was not just competing, it was overtaking. And it wasn't doing it with decades of brand loyalty or massive advertising budgets. It was doing it with product excellence and relentless innovation. The Model Y wasn't playing catch-up. It was setting the pace. Of course, challenges remained. Critics pointed to Tesla's build quality, its sometimes unpredictable delivery schedules, or its reliance on a single touchscreen interface. But for most buyers, these concerns faded quickly in the face of what the car offered. Because when you're experiencing instant torque on the highway, when you're recharging in minutes at a supercharger, when you're enjoying over-the-air updates that add new entertainment features for the kids or improve autopilot performance, those small imperfections become background noise, and autopilot itself became one of the defining features of the Model Y. Though not a fully autonomous system, it gave drivers a taste of the future. Lane keeping, adaptive cruise control, automatic lane changes, the kind of semi-autonomous features that once felt like science fiction were suddenly everyday realities. For many, the Model Y was their first introduction to the idea that cars could drive themselves, at least partially. And once you've experienced that, it's hard to go back to a vehicle that can't. The cultural impact of the Model Y grew with every passing year. It wasn't just another car, it was the symbol of a shift. When neighbors saw one parked in a driveway, it wasn't just about status, it was about the future arriving. When kids climbed inside and saw the massive central screen, they weren't looking at a car, they were looking at a glimpse of tomorrow. And when governments looked at the sales charts, they saw proof that electric vehicles weren't niche products anymore. They were mainstream by 2022. The Model Y was outselling some of the most popular gasoline vehicles on Earth. By 2023, it achieved the unthinkable. It became the world's best-selling car overall. Not the best-selling electric car, not the best-selling crossover, the best-selling car, period. For a company that had once been dismissed as a risky startup, this was the ultimate vindication. The Model Y wasn't just a product, it was a revolution on wheels.